Are you having a hard time figuring out what to get Dad for Father's Day? Shop now at sportshistorynetwork.com/row1 and save 15% off your order when you check out Row 1 Brand's Vintage Sports Pictorium Gallery. They have America's best sports art. With over 7,200 historic sports prints, you're assured to find something unique for Dad this Father's Day. If he's an NFL buff, check out the 1963 vintage NFL helmet poster. Shop now at sportshistorynetwork.com/row1.
This is our league, and this is your league. From the 55-yard line on CFL America Radio and the Sports History Network.
This is a league of A's and BCs. It's green and red and gold and black and blue. This is a league with 2 official languages and many unofficial languages. It's East versus West, wheat versus iron, love versus hate. This is a league where superstars are extraordinary and ordinary at the same time. It's a league of ice, of fog, of mud and wind. And for one Sunday in November, it's the nation's glue. This is a league as diverse as a country, a league of Jacksons and Kwongs, Johnsons, Moscas, O'Shea's, and Haji Razulis. This is his league, her league, their league, and their league. It's my league, and it's your league. This is our league.
This is Greg, and we are coming to you live from the 55-yard line here in Chicago and in South Carolina, where this week we sit down with football historian Randy Snow of the World of Football podcast that he and his son Adam broadcast from Kalamazoo, Michigan each week to talk not just American football, but Canadian football as well, including commentary on current issues and history lessons on the game that we all love, both north and south of the border. Randy, my friend, welcome. I appreciate you coming on, and huge fan of your show, your weekly show, and very appreciative of you coming on to our show and talk history.
Well, thank you for having me on your show. I appreciate it. I'll love to talk football whenever I can.
First question I have, obviously, like us, you're a huge fan, but when did the history aspect come in? How old were you when you really started getting into the backstory of football?
Well, it was about maybe 10 years ago or so. I just started talking to Adam about the USFL, and I just assumed that Adam knew what I was talking about because I lived through the USFL. I knew all this stuff, and it took me a minute to realize, my gosh, he wasn't there. He wasn't born yet when that was going on. He doesn't know all this stuff, and I thought, well, I've got all this knowledge about things that happened in the past, the USFL and the CFL and things like that. So I just thought I need to start, concentrating on the history of football. And I started, and that's when my love of football history really took off, was after I realized that I know a lot of things that young people don't. So I felt like it was my mission to educate young people on what happened before, because when young people think about millennials, I call them, when they start talking about football history, they think it goes all the way back to Super Bowl I. That's ancient history for a lot of these kids. And I'm like, no, there was so much more that came before that, and you need to know about it. And I can tell you because I was there. So that's kind of where my love for the history of the game started at.
Well, and that's interesting what you said about the USFL too, because I was the same way, and it was so important to me, and I was such a big fan. I'm kind of like you. I just assumed that everyone knows the backstory from 1983 to 85 and the 86 fall season that never happened. But you're right. I mean, you just get glazed looks from a lot of people when you bring it up.
Yeah. Yeah, I went to my first NFL game in 1975 when I was 16 years old. My brother took me to a game, and it's grown since then, and then 83 the USFL came along, and for 3 years I was just in football heaven because you had the NFL in the fall, you had USFL in the spring. So I had year-round football going on, and I could be a fan of the Lions in the fall, and I could be a fan of the Michigan Panthers in the spring, and they didn't conflict with one another because they were totally unrelated. But I had football year round, so I loved it.
Well, see, that's why I've always been jealous of people like you and Greg, because you do live in a major league city, and I'm from Birmingham, and I'm moving back next week, as a matter of fact. But what we've had in Birmingham has always been these off-brand leagues. So, once they came along, you just really had to embrace them because that's all you had. So if you had spring football, you were a free agent when you got to the fall, as far as whatever NFL team that you rooted for. But yeah, that was great about the USFL because you did have a completely separate league, so you didn't have to divide any loyalties whatsoever.
Right. And it was nice because those two teams played in the same stadium. So from Detroit to Kalamazoo, it's about a 2-hour drive. So it was not that big of a deal to drive over to see a game, either of the Panthers or to the Lions.
Yeah, Greg, did you ever go to any
I'm
Blitz
sorry.
games? Oh, I'm sorry. I've just.
Oh,
did you
no.
ever go to any-
I apologize. And also too, arena football. I know you're a huge arena football fan.
Yep. And we had a team up in Grand Rapids. So that's like an hour from my house. From our house to the parking lot at the arena up there was exactly 1 hour. So that started out in the year 2000. The team actually started, I believe, in 1998. And in 2000, I went to my first game, and it was arranged by my Air National Guard unit. They took a bunch of people, and we just met up there. They bought a bunch of seats, and I took the boys, and we loved it. And I went back later on that season, and I took my older brother with me, and it was just him and I. And he had never seen anything like arena football. And so we're sitting there in the game, and about halftime, I turned to my brother and I said, "Hey, you want to get season tickets next year?" And he goes, "Heck yeah, I do. This is awesome." And so I had season tickets through 2008 when the team folded. So yeah, it was a great time. Great way to bond with the kids, take them to an arena game and just have a good time. And it was, the price was right. Season tickets, I think I got for about $100, for 2 or 3 seats. So it was awesome.
Well, I know Birmingham had an Arena 2 team, which was nothing, not nearly on the level as the Arena League. And it really seemed like it had carved out a really great niche. And then all of a sudden, and admittedly, I didn't follow it as closely as you did, but what happened? I mean, it just seems like overnight, everything started going downhill.
Well, so your team was the Steel Dogs, I think, down there, wasn't it?
Yep. Birmingham Steel Dogs.
Yep. What was going on was the Arena Football League at one time had a total of 19 teams, and they were getting pretty big. And then all of a sudden they said, well, we need a developmental league. So they started their own minor league. They called it AF2, Arena Football 2. Mm-hmm. And that's where the Steel Dogs came in and a bunch of other things. There were actually more AF2 teams in the country than there were Arena Football League teams. They were just everywhere in a lot of smaller markets and smaller venues. In fact, they had one that was in Fort Wayne, Indiana, called the Fort Wayne Fusion for a year, and I covered that team. So it was really strange because I'm covering a game in Grand Rapids one night, and then I'm going an hour and a half south to Fort Wayne to cover a game on another night. I loved it. I couldn't get enough of it. It was hard. I couldn't do it at my age now, but back then, 10, 15 years ago, it was awesome. And I always had a couple of kids in tow. I might be in the press box, but the kids were sitting in the seats and I could see them from the press box, and we just had a good time. They enjoyed the game. I enjoyed covering it, and we talked football all the way home on the drive.
Nice family affair.
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And when you guys talk arena ball, and actually, I think you're one of the few podcasts that I know of that talks arena football each week in terms of what's going on with the scores, not so much with the business part of it, but with the scores and the history of it too. I mean, you've been there, you've seen the history of the game. And go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I'm just going to say, right, what's going on today? I mean, you've got the National Arena League and you've got the American Arena League, but to me, they're not playing arena football. They are indoor football leagues. There's an indoor football league, and there's several others, but they play a different style because the main thing is for arena football to be arena football, you have to have the rebound nets. And that's something that nobody else had except the Arena Football League, because that was patented with a U.S. patent on the gameplay. So everybody else, they might call themselves, arena football, but they're indoor football. There was only one Arena Football League, and that was the Arena Football League and Arena Football 2.
Yeah, I think that's what's been kind of disappointing, because a lot of these leagues have popped up, and if you did follow the original Arena League, like you were talking about, it was unique. I mean, there were the nets and everything else, and that's how I came to associate indoor football. I mean, that was indoor football to me. And then all of a sudden, these little
Right.
fly-by-night leagues would come along, and they would basically just roll a rug out onto a hockey rink, and pitch it and catch it, and it just wasn't the same at all.
But really, there's nothing wrong with indoor football, because I covered indoor football teams. We had a team here in Kalamazoo. It was called the Kalamazoo Explosion. There was a team in the city, about a half an hour from here in Battle Creek, Michigan, called the Battle Creek Crunch. I covered that team. When the Fort Wayne Freedom wasn't playing, they had an indoor team called the Fort Wayne Freedom. And so I like indoor football, but there is a distinction between the two. And to me, the Arena Football League was much superior. Right. But there's nothing wrong with indoor football.
And I've been here in Chicago. We had the Chicago Rush play, and I was at 3 of their games, and I was fortunate enough to have seats literally on the 25-yard line at the pads. And it's quite an experience to watch a game from far up. But when you're right down there, it's like watching a hockey game with cleats.
You mentioned the Chicago Rush. Randy, you'd probably know this. Were they the team that played in the first test game? Because it seems like ESPN had a test game of 2 teams before the league actually started. For some reason, the Chicago Rush kind of popped into my head.
It was they were a couple of semi-pro teams that they put together for the first test game. And I'm gonna make a mistake here, but I think one was called the Politicians. And the other one, God, I can't remember the other team's name. Oh, geez. But no, they were
Rockford something, I believe.
Yeah, that sounds right.
But the Politicians, you're right on, yeah.
And I cannot remember the other team, but they were all made up of semi-pro players that they brought in just for a test game. Mm-hmm. So the Chicago Rush did not come along until years later, but that first game was in Chicago.
Right. Okay.
But in Chicago, up at what we used to call the Rosemont Horizon, which is now the Allstate Arena.
Yes.
And so with, Arena, and I know you're a big CFL fan too. How about,
yes.
And I know you've been to a number of CFL games. So tell us about your CFL experience.
Well, I had heard about the CFL when I was a lot younger, and I'd never seen a game because, back in the 70s, early 80s, it wasn't on TV. There was no internet. So it was a big mystery to me. And I had a friend who lived in Battle Creek, and they had cable TV, and they had the Canadian Broadcasting Network on there. So I invited myself over to watch a little bit of a CFL game. And I know it was Edmonton as one of the teams, and it might've been Calgary, the other team. So I actually got to see an actual game for the first time. And then I didn't see it for years and years after that. So what really got my interest back into the CFL is when Doug Flutie went up there, because I followed him in college. I followed him in the USFL. I actually saw him play in a game in the USFL. And then he went up to Canada. So then I was totally fixated on learning more about the Canadian Football League and trying to find it on TV, which in the early days you couldn't, but by the mid 90s, they were showing the games on ESPN. So I could see some games there. And now, ESPN's got a game or 2 every week, so I can watch all I want. But yeah, I was following Doug Flutie's career up there, so I blame him for my love of Canadian football.
Yeah, we all have a backstory on the CFL, but I mean, once you start to like it, you can never not like it again. It's just such a great game.
Yeah,
and it's such an underdog league too.
Yeah, when you start watching a game, you forget that there's actually 12 guys on the field. You forget that there's only 3 downs. most of the time, and you just enjoy the football. And it's all passing, which I like, which is what the Arena Football League was like. I mean, that was 90% passing, or 99% passing, and a few runs here and there. So the CFL is kind of the same, and there's great athletes, there's great games. I've seen some great games in person. I've seen some great games on TV, and I love the game, and I love the players up there.
And being where you're at in Kalamazoo, I know, as a kid in the early 70s, I grew up over by Detroit for a period of time. And I always would tell people, I go, but for my parents moving back to Chicago, I probably would have been a CFL fan, because you could get the games on CBC out of Windsor. And also I would have been a Detroit Lions fan. I know you're a huge Lions fan. So,
Yep.
every time I see the Lions play, I'm like, I'm always going to pull for those Lions. So now in terms of your CFL,
it's not easy.
No, I know.
It's not easy.
No.
In fact, I'm going to tell you this.
Yeah.
There was a particularly bad game that they had it in their grasp, and they lost the game somehow. I don't know why. And I felt so bad. And I felt worse for my sons. And I actually sent them an email, and I said, I'm sorry that I made you a Detroit Lions fan, because now you know what it's like to have your heart ripped out after watching a game, because this was the perfect example. That loss this week was just absolutely terrible. Oh. My son saved that email, and he brings that up every now and then about how I sent an apology email to him because I was sorry for making him a Lions fan all of his life.
Oh, wow. If my dad didn't make me a Bears fan. I just kind of became one. I was more of a Dolphins fan back in the early 70s, and now I'm an Arizona Cardinals fan. And I know if I would have a son, I'd probably be the same way as you are with the Cardinals. And I probably would have made him a Cardinals fan too. So
and
that's being the great thing about doing these podcasts is we're all fans. I mean, for all of us, this cost us nothing to do. We get no financial anything out of it, but what we get out of it is that mutual love for the game. And and I know with Adam and you, there's a huge love of that game. And what's it like? I mean, I've never been to a football game with my dad. I know Scott's been to games with his dad. So when you guys go to a game, let me ask you, it's a full day affair. I mean, how often do you guys go? I mean, what's game day like for you guys? Y'all going to see the Lions or any other team play?
Well, like I said, to see the Lions, it's about a 2-hour drive, maybe a little more. Yeah. So we've got to get up pretty early and hit the road because I like to get there fairly early. So I like to get to the stadium around 11 o'clock as soon as the doors open for a 1 o'clock game. So we'll leave the house around 9 o'clock in the morning, and we'll drive over there. We've been to some Thanksgiving Day games, and those are pretty fun too. But it's just the fact that it is an all-day affair. So we're there a couple hours before the game, because when I used to take them to the Silverdome when the Lions played up there in Pontiac, it was fun to get there early before the stadium filled up and just walk all the way around the stadium on both levels. You go up to the upper level, and that's where you get a hot dog and a Coke because there's nobody there yet. So you can get that out of the way, and you go and you look at the different vendors that are selling whatever, and maybe you buy some souvenirs or this and that. And then you finally go to your seat before everybody else is there, and then you let the stadium fill up. For the most part, I like to sit in my seat until the game is over with. I don't like to get up at halftime or whatever, but I remember one time when Adam was little, he wanted to have a hot dog at halftime. So we went down, and 80,000 of our close personal friends were all in line in front of us to get a hot dog and a beer. And I said, man, I'm never doing this again. And we were there when the kickoff happened for the second half because we were still in line. So today I like to just sit in my seat, and I don't get out until the game's over with. So and that might include leaving early if it's a bad game.
Right. So Adam, I imagine, does when he's the one that does all the ordering and the carrying back to the seat.
If he wants something, he can go. Bring me back some popcorn, whatever.
I used to love the dome. The first time you go to a dome stadium, if you've never been to it, I mean, that's aside from the game, that's just an experience. Just because, wow, I'm in a football stadium with a roof. It's kind of crazy because the first one I went to was the Louisiana Superdome. It's really awesome the first time you do it.
Well, the Pontiac Silverdome, as you know, was a fabric roof.
Right.
It wasn't solid. It was held up by air pressure. And so you had to go through the revolving doors because everything else was closed up. So when you walked into the stadium, you went through the revolving doors and your ears would start popping the minute you got inside because of the difference in air pressure.
Wow.
And after the game, a lot of people would open up the regular doors and all this air was just rushing out. So it was like a huge windstorm to get out of that place. And the RCA Dome in Indianapolis was the same way because that had the same type of roof on it. And I took the kids down there once for a preseason game, and it was almost a carbon copy of the Silverdome at that time. But now that you've got Ford Field with a solid roof, I wish they'd have put a retractable roof on that stadium because it would be nice early in the season to have the roof open, but it's not. But I have been down to the Indianapolis Stadium down there too, and that is awesome. That is an awesome stadium. There's so much to see in that. Ford Field has a lot of charm because what they did when they built that stadium is they took the Hudson's warehouse, Hudson's department store. They had a warehouse there, and that was where they kept all their furniture before they sent it off to the stores. And part of Ford Field, one side of it is the old Hudson warehouse. So it was this old brick building that they incorporated into Ford Field. And Ford Field now has so much character and so much charm, whereas the Silverdome was just a big open barn. They had no character, no charm. It was just 80,000 people. And now you go to Ford Field and it's like 65,000 people, but there's so much character and the brickwork and just there's so much there to see. I just love going there. It's really awesome.
Yeah, the last dome stadium I went to was Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, which is, it's a great facility, but yeah, there's something about one that's built around an existing building or something like that just makes it special. This obviously Mercedes-Benz Stadium just came from nothing, but it is gorgeous, especially the first time you go into it.
Yeah.
And
Adam wants to go to that stadium real bad.
And you were talking about the Hoosier Dome, and I'm as you're telling the story about talking about the Hoosier Dome, I'm laughing. If I remember, correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe I'm imagining this, but I just remember there were revolving doors in and out of the stadium, and it was almost like you were being shot out like of a rocket coming out of the stadium. Am I correct in that?
Yes, you're pretty much correct. Like I said, the roof was held up by air pressure, so there was all this pressure, and when you're going out, the air pressure is following you out there.
Yeah, it's the only memory I really have of it, other than a half-empty Colts, half-empty dome with Jeff George leading the Colts to yet another loss.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of those memories for everybody.
And well, speaking of memories, what are some of your best memories? Be it be it NFL, CFL, arena. I mean, you've seen a lot of games, and I know, and we're not that much difference in age. I you and I were talking yesterday, but you've been to a lot more games. So what are some of your best memories of seeing, whether it be the Lions play, whether it be CFL or arena? Did you get to see some classics?
Well, one of my best memories of the Lions was back in around 76, 77. The first couple of years I was going to NFL games. Tight end Charlie Sanders, who's now in the Hall of Fame with the Lions, he became the Lions' all-time leading receiver in the game when I was there. And I'll never forget that play. The Lions were on the 5-yard line, inside the 5-yard line, but it was clear at the other end of the stadium. So I was way on the other end, but they hiked the ball and everybody on both teams ran to the right, figuring that's where the play was going to go. Quarterback Greg Landry rolled out to his left and Charlie Sanders went out to his left, and they were the only two on that whole side of the field. And he just flipped this soft little pass to Charlie Sanders in the end zone, giving him the all-time receiving record for the Detroit Lions. And I remember that play so vividly. But that's one of my favorite memories of the Lions. When you talk about arena football, The Grand Rapids Rampage won the Arena Football Championship in 2001. It was Arena Bowl 15, and we were there for that. I bought extra tickets. My niece was there. My brother was there that I had the season tickets with. He eventually, after a few years, decided he didn't want them anymore. So I bought a third seat, and I took two of my boys to every game. But we got to be there while Grand Rapids won the Arena Bowl title. And David Baker was there. He was the commissioner of the Arena Football League. Now he's the president of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But I got to stand right next to him on the field after the game as the confetti's coming down. And man, that guy's huge. I'm only 5'6", but he seemed like he was 10 feet tall.
I saw.
He's just a massive guy.
I was at the Hall of Fame about 4 years ago with my nephew, and I saw him there, and you can't miss him. He said he's huge.
Yeah.
He's huge. I mean, and so yeah, no. And how about CFL? I mean, did you see? You've seen a few. You've been in person with a few CFL games. Anything memorable up there?
The games were all pretty good. I have on my website, I have a list of all the games that I've been to. And for some of the CFL games, I actually have a link to the YouTube highlights to that CFL game that I was there. And there've been some really great games, but my best memory of the CFL is going to the old Sky Dome. That place was just awesome. Watching the roof open up. I don't know if you've ever seen video of the roof opening up, but it opens in two sections. There's a big center section that slides off to one side, and then there's a rounded section that spins all the way around the stadium, and it tucks in under that big flat section that moved to one side. It's just awesome. I've got a video on our website. If you go to the links section and go down to CFL, you'll find a link to a video called 2 years and 2 minutes, or it's either 3 years and 3 minutes. But it's a time-lapse video of the building of the Sky Dome. And at the end, it shows the roof opening and closing several times. So they showed us that when we took a backstage tour of the stadium when we were there. And it's
nice.
That stadium was just awesome. It's just incredible.
Yeah, that was cool when the Argos would draw big crowds there too. Or it's been a while since they've drawn big crowds, but yeah, I remember their Sky Dome days.
Yeah, it was an awesome place to see a game. In fact, the first time I went there, I actually stayed in the hotel that is built into the stadium. If you watch any baseball games there, behind home plate, there are several hotel rooms that overlook the field, and I was lucky enough to get a room overlooking the field. And so, but I still went and bought a ticket to the game. I think I paid $8 for an end zone ticket. And so I sat in the crowd watching the game, and the game was a blowout. The reason I was there was because Doug Flutie was playing with the Calgary Stampeders, and he came to town and he just beat up the Argonauts something bad. I think the final score was 53-3 or 55-3, something like that. They took him out in the fourth quarter and put in his backup, some guy by the name of Jeff Garcia, to come in and do mop-up duty for the Stampeders. And Flutie spent the rest of the game signing autographs for the Argonaut fans who were dying for his autograph behind the bench. But so when they pulled him out of the game, I went back to my room, and I was watching the game on TV, and I could also look out the window and see the game. But I had the window open to get the crowd noise.
Oh, nice.
So I couldn't hear the TV. I couldn't hear the TV because the TV wouldn't go loud enough. So I had to tune it in on the radio. So I had the radio for the play-by-play. I had the TV going, and I had the game outside my window.
Oh man,
that's a sensory overload there.
It was so much fun, and that was my first experience with a CFL game.
Wow.
And I've been back to Toronto a few times. I have not been to their new stadium, BMO Field, but I've been back there a couple of times in Toronto for games. My son and I have been to Hamilton for some games. First at the old Ivor Wynn Stadium before they tore it down, and now they've got the new Tim Hortons Field, which is gorgeous. I mean, I'm glad I got to see Ivor Wynn a couple of times because that was such a historic stadium in that town.
Right.
And it went back to the 20s, I think. And so that was nice. But then they replaced it on the exact same site with the new Tim Hortons Field. And that stadium is just really, really nice. And
yeah, that's the team I cheer for in the CFL. I'd really love to make it up there. I hate that I never made it to Ivor Wynn just for the reasons you mentioned.
Yep.
Yeah, and
No.
I'm pretty much an Argos fan, so I've yet to make that trip to Toronto to see the Argos play. I mean, it's nice to know, I guess, in a way that I'll not have to worry about having to buy overpriced tickets in Toronto for a game, at least for the foreseeable future. But still,
Right. I'm just hoping they open the border sometime soon. I'd love to go to a game this year, and I don't know if that's going to happen or not.
Yeah.
Well, in talking about that, I mean, obviously with everything that's going on with the CFL right now and going, whether or not they're, and, I know, that they're on the 14th is when the decision's supposed to come down as to whether they're going to play. I'm of the opinion that they're going to play. How about you?
I really don't know. I'm hoping that they will. I'm surprised that they didn't play last year. The NFL showed that it can be done. The NBA showed it can be done if they stay in a bubble. And last year there was talk that the CFL teams were all going to go to Edmonton. They were all going to play there, or maybe between Edmonton and one other city, they would have a bubble and they were going to play games all in one location. And that didn't happen. So I really don't know what's going to happen this year, but I hope that they do play because they put on a good show. It's a great product, and I think they need the money. They need more in gate receipts than the NFL does. I've always said that the NFL can play to empty stadiums year in and year out, and they'd still be making money hand over fist from all the TV money that they're getting.
Mm-hmm.
The CFL is not like that. They've got to have people in the seats, and I'm just afraid that the CFL might be in trouble if they don't play this year.
Yeah, that would be, I'm afraid too. It would be absolutely devastating if they went 2 consecutive seasons with no football. That'd be awfully hard to recover from.
Yeah.
Well, I think if they don't, if they don't play, they're done. I mean, that's just, I think the economics of it, and let's face it, I mean, most people's attention spans are short, and if you're not playing, people forget about you. It's kind of like with the Arena League. Going back to talking about the Arena League, when they went out of during the Great Recession, they took that year off. Then they tried to come back, and it was never ever the same again.
Yeah, that's true. Even though the Arena Football League folded in 2008, the Arena Football 2 kept playing.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
In 2009. So I actually saw a couple of games that year. I went to Milwaukee for one game, and I actually went all the way to Oklahoma City for another game in 2009. And the reason I went that far is because the 2 coaches of the teams that were playing were both former Grand Rapids Rampage coaches.
Okay.
And so I went down to reconnect with them and took the boys. It was a nice weekend to drive all the way to Oklahoma City.
But back then, so the AF2 became then the AFL. So was there a gap in seasons? Did they lose a complete season, or?
The AFL lost the 2009 season.
Okay.
But in 2010, they took some of the teams from the AFL and some of the AF2 teams, and they made a whole new AFL.
Okay. But after that, it seemed to me it was really never the same because they lost the franchises. Like the Chicago Rush just were gone.
Yeah.
And that was one of the, at least from what I understood, one of the cornerstone franchises since the league was actually headquartered in Chicago.
Yeah. And Grand Rapids didn't come back after 2008 either. They didn't come back in 2010. So we kind of adopted the Cleveland Gladiators as our team. And Cleveland is just a short 4-hour drive from here. So we went to a lot of games in Cleveland to watch arena football. And the former coach from the Rampage in 2008 was now the coach in Cleveland. So that made it easy to transition to being a Cleveland Gladiators fan.
This is sort of off topic, but I was going through your website, which is great, by the way, with all the stuff that you've done and seen. And what caught my eye was when you went to the player draft for Team Michigan in the All-American Football League. You know, Birmingham had the same thing, Team Alabama, and of course it never got off the ground. But I would just want to get your take on the whole concept of that league, because I was actually at SEC Media Days covering it when news broke that it was being formed. And I think originally there was thought that, this might end up being a fairly decent developmental league.
Yeah, I thought the same thing too. They had Team Michigan, Team Alabama. I think there was a Team Texas. There were 8 teams altogether, all based on the state, and so they were going to be taking players from the different colleges in that state to try and make up that team. Uh, it was I thought it was a good idea. They were going to play by college football rules, so you only needed 1 foot in bounds, and if you went down, you were down. You didn't have to be touched or anything like that. So it was a very, very interesting premise, and it was that day while I was at the, well, I guess I was at Ford Field uh, during their tryout. They had like a regional tryout that day, and I got to meet. Oh gosh, what's his name? The guy who was the head coach at Marshall in the movie, We Are Marshall. I forget his name, but
I can't think of it either.
Matthew McConaughey played him in the movie, and I got to meet him that day, and we talked a little bit because he was a big supporter of it, and there were a lot of people that were a lot of college people, a lot of NFL people that were really behind that league. And what happened was, they had a draft, and I was there to cover the draft a few months later. And then eventually about a week before the season was supposed to kick off, a major contributor backed out. So they lost all that money, and the league just never got off the ground.
Yeah, I think it was that subprime mortgage thing caused the guy to exit, and there was no money. The thing to me, gimmick's the wrong word, but one thing that was interesting is supposedly the players in the league had to be college graduates. And, I was thinking, well, that's admirable and that's interesting, but I wonder how that would play with fans, because fans really don't care what a guy's GPA is.
No, they only care if you can catch or pass or kick the ball. That's all they care about.
Didn't mean to hijack it there, Greg. I just
no, not at all.
No, it was an interesting idea, and I was sorry that it didn't get off the ground.
Well, and that's the thing. We've all seen, we've all seen these leagues come and go. Obviously, the two that have always stuck around have been the NFL and CFL, and for a while the AFL too. The Arena League too was very reliable. Yep. In terms of just professional football itself, now. Let me ask you, the Detroit Wheels, did you ever get to go to any of the World Football League games?
No, that was 1974 was their season. Like I said, I went to my first NFL game in 75. So I heard about them, but I didn't know anything about them. No.
I actually saw them play the Birmingham Americans in 1974.
Oh, okay. Yep.
So I've one-upped you guys. I've seen the Detroit Wheels live.
And you've seen the Southern California Sun, too.
Twice. That's right.
It doesn't get any better than that in terms of football fandom right there.
Magenta and orange for life.
I did do a history lesson on the Detroit Wheels, and the history lesson was the Wheels couldn't get a contract to play at Tiger Stadium, where the Lions were playing at the time in 74. And so they had to go to Eastern Michigan University to play their games. And the only reason that stadium has stadium lights today is because the Detroit Wheels paid to put them in at that stadium. That was part of the agreement. We'll let you play here at Eastern Michigan, but you have to pay to put in the lights, because most of their games were on Wednesday and Thursday nights in the World Football League, and they're all night games. So, so they're the ones that paid to put those lights up, which are still there today.
Is that Rynearson Stadium that you're talking about?
Rynearson Stadium, yep.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Greg.
No. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, you mentioned the lights, made me think of Downing Stadium where the New York Stars played. And I remember reading stories when the Birmingham Americans went up there and played them, and they were down 29-3 at halftime, and they came back and beat New York 32-29. But the players were talking about the lighting was so bad, you just kind of had to guess on pass patterns. They would just go back and say, look, go to the 30, do a cross pattern, and hopefully, the ball will wind up in your hands. But apparently it was just awful, the illumination there.
You guys are talking lights, and the only light story I have is I know down at the Arizona State University's, talking about old football stadiums and lights and everything, but the Arizona State University, their baseball field, the lights there were from the Polo Grounds.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah. That was the one little bit of trivia that I would drive my Navy enlisted with down at my reserve unit. We'd always drive by and I go, you know where the lights came from? And they'll be like, sir, the Polo Grounds. Oh, I've told you this story before, huh? So let me ask you, in terms of just talking about football history, what state, I mean, when you and I talked offline, I know you said you'd not been to Chicago for a game. Correct?
Yeah, I've not seen the Bears Soldier Field. I
Um,
did see a Rush game. Grand Rapids went to play the Chicago Rush, so I've been there for a game.
and how about what are some of the other stadiums you've been to in the States for NFL games? You've already mentioned obviously the Hoosier Dome and Lucas Oil Stadium, but where else have you been?
Let's see. My son and I went down to Carolina with the Panthers Stadium. That was way back in 2002. We saw a game down there, and I've been to a game in Cleveland. Saw a preseason game with the Lions there in Cleveland. Been to Lambeau Field a couple of times, but I've never actually seen a game there. It was all off-season kind of things. I'm not a Packers fan. You know me. I'm a Lions fan. So the Packers are not anything I want anything to do with. But I will tell you this: I've been to Green Bay a couple of times. I love the town of Green Bay. I love the people in Green Bay, and Lambeau Field is awesome, and everybody should go there and see it. But the Packers can lose every Sunday, and I'm going to be the happiest guy ever. But no,
Yeah.
we took a tour of the stadium and we saw the Packers Hall of Fame, and there's just so much to that stadium that's just awesome. They took us down to the field. They would not let us step on the hallowed ground of the grass field there. We could stay on the track, but they wouldn't let us set foot on the field.
Really?
Yeah.
Because if you ever make it back this way, have you ever done a tour of Wrigley Field?
No, I have not.
Even though it's baseball, that's a football place you got to see, because obviously it's the oldest stadium still standing that hosted NFL games.
Yep.
And when I did the tour about 4 years ago, we at least got to step on the grass, but they had it all roped off, so you couldn't go much past the dugout. But even then, it was cool because you're sitting there in the dugout, and it's the same door. That dugout door has always been there, and you see in the NFL films clips guys coming out of the dugout door, and even better was the visitors' locker room, because that's the same one they've used ever since it's been there. And just thinking of all the names and the guys that have been through there: Babe Ruth, Babe Ruth, all the baseball players, and then you think Johnny Unitas, Vince Lombardi, and you just start going down the line. You just sit there and going, and you can hear ghosts. It's amazing. You just hear like all the history that was in that room, and it's a small locker room. So was it kind of like that with Lambeau, in terms of just having that surreal feeling that of all the guys that have played there before?
No, I didn't get that feeling. I probably should have, but I just thought it was just a beautiful stadium.
Yeah.
I belong to the Pro Football Researchers Association, and a few years ago, we compiled a book about the 1966 Green Bay Packers, and they asked a lot of us to contribute certain chapters on either a player or a coach or some aspect of the team. And I was lucky enough to be assigned to write about the history of Lambeau Field.
Oh.
So I got to do that chapter in the book, and I also did a chapter on Boyd Dowler, who was one of the receivers, who I'd never heard of until I did the story, and now I'm realizing that his name is right up there with Bart Starr and Curly Lambeau. Boyd Dowler was a fantastic receiver for the team, so it was interesting. That's why I like to do research, because I love to learn things that I don't know about players, about games, or whatever. So yeah, I wrote the chapter on the history of Lambeau Field. It was designed after the Big House in Ann Arbor. I think it was the
really?
same.
I didn't know that.
The same kind of design, but it was designed in a way that it could be expanded over the years, and it has. But they knew that they wanted to expand it. They started out with just a small bowl, and then they added this and they added that, and it's just continued to grow.
Well, let me ask you, in terms of just talking about history and the research of it, and even the reading of it. And I know Scott and I have had these conversations, before we did the podcast. And one of the things I love about football history is not only reading about the games themselves, but the times that those games were set in and the history of the stadiums and how they were built. Are you the same way when it comes to sports history?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to think this is funny. I grew up next to a cemetery when I was a kid. My father, as a part-time job, sold cemetery monuments, which worked out perfectly because we lived next door to a cemetery. And I used to go around with him to a lot of the cemeteries when when somebody's stone got delivered, we'd go around to the next town or the next county and go to the cemetery. So I have, in the last few years, made it my mission to go around and visit the graves of great football players. Newt Rockne in South Bend, George Gipp up in Calumet, Michigan, Vince Lombardi in New Jersey, Jim Thorpe in Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania. I've been to see all these guys, and I've got a whole list of others, the ones I want to go see. And I always get my picture taken by their grave. And it's, to me, it just adds something when you've read about these people all your life. Everybody knows who Newt Rockne is. Everybody's heard all the stories, but to stand there next to that person's final resting place, it really brings that person, it makes them real. They're not just a story in a book. They're real because they're right here. And here I am standing next to that person.
No, I think that's cool. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
I don't, I guess somebody might think that's morbid, but I don't think that's morbid at all. I mean, I think that's absolutely, that's a nice little tribute, especially as you said, if you've learned about them, written about them, why not see where they are?
Well, for every grave that I have visited, I have written an article, and you can find all those on my website. So if I go to a grave, I do one. In fact, the latest ones I went to were in South Bend again. Leon Hart, the 1947 Heisman Trophy winner. He went on to play for the Detroit Lions. And then the coach, Ara Parsegian, he's buried not too far. So I went and visited both of those graves, got my picture taken by both of them. And then I wrote an article about both of them, their careers, their college careers, pro careers, whatever. And so it's just a way to get information out there to people. Here's what the grave looks like. And I even tell you how to find it. Go to the cemetery, take the second entrance, go all the way to the end, turn left, and it's right there on your right or something like that. So, if people want to actually go see these graves, they can do that. But I love doing that.
Have you been to Papa Bear's grave?
I have not. I have a list of people around Chicago that I want to go and do. Let's see, who else is there? Oh gosh. I've got a list of about 4 or 5 people that are buried around Chicago, and one of these days I will do that.
Well, and the thing is too, I mean, a lot of the players that we all grew up watching, unfortunately, everybody's getting old and everybody is starting to pass. And I know it seems like, over the past several years, you see a lot of the heroes that we grew up with are gone. Like Nick Bonaconte is a good example. Who were your favorite players growing up? I mean, that I know you mentioned, you saw Greg Landry play, but who were your favorites?
Well, most of my favorite players all come from the Lions. I mean, right. I have one favorite team and 31 enemy teams. So I don't really, I did like Roger Staubach, and I liked Tom Landry. I respected both of them, and I watched them all the time. And then as soon as both of those guys were gone, when they fired Tom Landry, I was done with the Cowboys. So I did like Tom Landry and Roger Staubach. But, Charlie Sanders, Lem Barney, Greg Landry. I saw 2 games of the Michigan Panthers at the Silverdome, and both of the opponents were coached by Greg Landry because he was with the Chicago Blitz the first year, and they came to Detroit. And so I picked that game because Greg Landry was there. I also saw him play in Detroit when he came back with the Baltimore Colts as a backup. And then the next year, he was with the Arizona Wranglers. And, I don't know if you know the story, but the owners
swap.
The owners of the 2 teams actually swapped teams. And so all those players went to the other team. So yeah, I got to see Greg Landry 2 years in a row playing for different teams at the Silverdome. So, and as a kid, he was the first Sports Illustrated poster that I had on my wall, was a poster of Greg Landry. But Barry Sanders was awesome. Billy Sims was a great player. People don't remember Billy Sims, but he was just as good as Barry Sanders. But his career was cut short after barely 4 seasons, and he blew out his knee and he never played again. But he had the potential to be just as good as Barry Sanders. So Billy Sims was another great player. And like I said, Lem Barney was awesome, and Charlie Sanders, and they were both playing on the team at the same time when I was watching them in the mid 70s. So I got to see them, and there's just been a lot of great Lions players. I just finished a book called "When Lions Were Kings." It's written by Richard Bach, who's from Detroit, and it follows the Detroit Lions during the 1950s. So it starts out with the 1950 season, goes to 51, 52, 53, all the way to 59. So you're reading about Bobby Lane and all the other great players, Leon Hart and all those players for Detroit. And towards the end, they picked up Alex Karras, who's now in the Hall of Fame. And,
Right.
And for a Lions fan, that is an awesome book. And I'll tell you, another awesome book is one that was written by Chris Willis about Dutch Clark.
Yep.
That was an awesome book too.
I have it on my bookshelf. I've not read it yet.
It's very, very good. And Chris Willis has a great writing style that once you get started in one of his books,
oh yeah,
it just flies by. It's a page turner. You can't wait to read the next page.
Right.
He's got a great style.
Yeah, his book on Joe Carr I could not put down, and I picked it up, not thinking. I read it. I'm like, you know what? Well, it was in the moment. Let's try it. Not even thinking. And next thing I mean, 3 days went by, and I'm like, I finally put it down. I burned right through it, and his book on Red Grange is incredible. But the one on Dutch Clark, I saw him in a book signing, and it's a funny story. I brought the Red Grange book with me, and the owner of the bookstore had a fit that I brought my own book. And so as I'm walking out, I'm like, I told Chris, I go, I'll take care of you. I'll take care of you on this one. So because I went home and ordered the book, and I emailed them later. I go, well, since I didn't buy your book at the book signing, I did you a solid and bought the one book I don't have. So, but yeah, his writing style is phenomenal. And his, when in his books, when he's written all his books, he puts his heart and soul in there. I mean, you walk away feeling like you've learned everything there is because he just put so much research into it, and couple that with his writing style, which it makes it so easy to read. I recommend him to anybody who likes football history to read his books, because you walk away not only understanding the game more, but you also understand the times, those times like the early NFL. Reading that Joe Carr book, man, a lot of things make sense now. And that's the beautiful thing about football history that we all love. It's that window to the past that really helps, I think, all of us enjoy the game more in the times that we're living in. It gives us some perspective. Yeah.
When I read that book on Dutch Clark, I really, really enjoyed it. And then because he's a former Lion, he led the Lions to the 1935 championship. Everybody in Detroit knows the name Dutch Clark, but who really knows that much about him? Well, this book answered all those questions. You found out exactly who he was. And in the picture section, he has a picture of Dutch Clark's grave in Colorado. And I'm thinking to myself, now there's a man after my own heart. He went and visited the grave and got a picture of it.
Yeah, we're going to hopefully have him on here over the summer, and I'll have to ask him about that. And any other good authors? I mean, you mentioned the book on the Lions. Any other good books on the Lions out there that you would recommend for us to read?
Well, Paper Lion, of course. That's everybody needs to read Paper Lion.
Everybody needs to see Paper Lion too.
Well,
the movie was even better.
In my opinion, books are always better, but the movie was pretty good. I really enjoyed the movie.
The book did not have a young Lauren Hutton in it.
That's true. That is very true. So I'll give you that one. But no, there's like I said, my three favorite books about the Lions are When Lions Were Kings, the Dutch Clark book by Chris Willis, and Paper Lion. Those three. If you read those three books, you really get a sense of what the Detroit Lions are all about.
Okay. And in terms of the Lions now, what do you think their chances are for the year?
I have been beaten down and into submission many years ago as a Lions fan. I get my hopes up every off season, and then the season kicks off and my hopes are dashed once again. But I just keep telling my kids, when they finally win it all, it's going to be that much sweeter because we've suffered so long.
Like
And
Cubs
it's kind of like,
fans.
Cleveland Browns fans, Cubs fans. Yep. They all know the same thing. Being a lifelong Lions fan has not been easy, but I'm still there every fall. And I'm either watching the games or I'm going to some games and I'm rooting for them every Sunday.
Well, it's funny. And Scott, I talk about simulation football all the time with Scott. And so in one of my leagues, there was only one team left, and that was the Lions. So when I was going through my team cuts, had to pick out my 12 best guys on the Lions. And I tell you what, just looking at the Lions offensive line, and I'm like, I got Stafford at my quarterback, obviously before they traded him to the Rams. I'm like, I got a team that actually might have a shot here. But, obviously, it's one thing to have it on paper. It's another thing to put it together in real life. So I'm even looking at going to a Lions game this year against the Bears, hopefully.
I like the new coach. I like his enthusiasm, but I've heard a lot of talk before. I want to see some wins before I get totally committed to the new coach.
Yeah,
well, I'm a Jets fan, so I feel your pain.
We all know it.
That was the thing. Matt Patricia just kind of nothing to show for anything. I mean, I felt bad for the guy, but I don't know. It's just something about it. When he took over that team, I'm like, I just don't see it happening.
Yeah. Well, you never know. You get the right coach and the right bunch of players, the right ownership, and it just clicks. And if something's not right, you're not going anywhere.
Yeah. Well, hey, at least we're not Packer fans. Look at it that way.
Exactly.
I'd rather deal with a losing team like the Cardinals or the Lions or even the Bears than be a Packer fan at this. And I told you before, some of my good friends are Packer fans, but
My wife tried to convert one of my sons to be a Packers fan many years ago.
Really?
In fact, my middle son, Aaron, she bought him a Brett Favre jersey, and he actually had his school picture taken in a Brett Favre jersey.
Ooh.
And we don't talk about that anymore in this house, but she tried to convert him, and it didn't work. Thank goodness.
Well, the team I always root for, other than the Bears in the Central, has always been the Lions, because it's hard to hate it's impossible to hate the Lions.
So you say you're going to the Thanksgiving game with the Bears?
No, I'm hoping to go to the Bears-Lions game here at Soldier Field in October.
Soldier Field, okay.
Fingers crossed. Got to talk to a few people at work about it, but I'm hopeful. And we picked that game out because we were going through the schedule, and I'm like, the Lions game, there should be tickets. That's kind of how we made that decision.
Yeah.
Scott, do you have anything to add? I'm sorry, I'm taking most of the interview here.
No, it's just it always makes me envious to listen to people who live in NFL towns. So I just like to hear you talk. Because even if you're suffering through pain, you have a team. You actually have a team, and you've had one for years. I'd take that pain any day of the week.
Well, I tell you what, it's funny, and Randy, help me out here. I don't know if you guys do you guys do the Twitter or like Facebook? Are you guys like amongst friends with your Lions fans on Facebook?
I don't do a whole lot with other Lions fans.
Well, it's interesting being a fan of a team and having all your friends who, during Bears Packer games, my Facebook feed is evenly split, and there is just so much smack talk going back and forth. That's the one beautiful thing about living in the age we live in. We have that now, because back when we were kids, I mean, we could talk to ourselves, talk to our friends, and maybe our dads cared, maybe they didn't. So let me ask you, in terms of just kind of moving forward with your website and with your podcast, you guys are going to just keep doing what you've been doing for as long as you can keep doing it, because you guys got a good thing going.
Well, as far as I know, we're just going to keep recording. Adam just bought a new computer, and he wants to get into video editing. So he wants to do some things on YouTube. One of the projects we might be doing is we might be doing some of our history lessons that we've done. We might be putting those on YouTube. maybe have me retell the story and throw up a few pictures of, the game or the player or whatever. So we might be doing that in the near future. And we've talked about recording our sessions when we record the podcast and just putting that all up on YouTube. Haven't quite gotten there yet. To me, I just like the format right now where we'll just sit down, we hit record, we talk for an hour. There's no breaks. We don't do any editing on our show. I mean, that's either good or bad. I don't know. But when we're done, we hit stop and he saves it and we upload it and there it is. So you're hearing the show within a half an hour after we finish it, and it's up and ready to go.
Well, I tell you what, every show that I've listened to, I've never heard the flaws, except for the last one at the very end when your son played the bloopers.
He's done that a few times to me. We'll mess up something and we'll stop. And there've been very few times when we've had to stop for anything. We just plow right through it, and it's kind of good that way.
And sometimes when you guys
keeps you on your toes.
And sometimes when you guys are recording, there's breaking news going on. I know a few times I've listened to it.
He's always got his phone right there, and he's looking at his phone to see if something comes up, and he'll stop me in the middle of a sentence. Oh, you got to hear about this.
Scott, you got anything else you want to add before we close out?
And now I've got a huge thunderstorm that just hit. So that's the excitement going on in my world right now.
Well, maybe we should wrap it up here before you lose all power over there. So, Randy, can you let everybody know where to find you guys over on the internet and over on the social media?
Yep. Our web address is theworldoffootball.com. Not just World of Football. You got to put the in front of it, because World of Football, it will take you to a European soccer site for all their coverage over there of what they call soccer, or what they call football. So theworldoffootball.com is our website. You can find us on Facebook and on Twitter at TWOF Kalamazoo. That stands for the World of Football Kalamazoo. And that's about it.
All right. Well, hey guys, Randy, thank you much for joining us. And speaking for Scott and I,
thank you, Randy.
Really both appreciate this. And to those listening, right after this, and if you're a Lions fan, or even if you're not a Lions fan, there's a little something extra at the end of this podcast for everybody's enjoyment. So for Scott and I, Randy, thank you, and hopefully we'll be talking to you again soon.
All right. Thanks a lot. Enjoyed it.
This is Joe Schmidt of the Detroit Lions. Our fight song, Lions Gridiron Hero.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Hi, I'm Oz Davis of the True the Goats podcast here at the Sports History Network. I'd like to take a minute to tell you about quite possibly the greatest website of all time, newspapers.com. If you're listening to this podcast, or any of them at the Sports History Network, you're probably into sports history. And you probably also know that for learning about anything prior to, say, 1990 online, the typical search engines like are nearly completely useless. But then there's newspapers.com. Newspapers.com gives you access to over 640 million pages worth of news from North America, Britain, Ireland, and more, dating from 1798 to last week. Do up a search for Super Bowl I, the 36th Berlin Olympics, Wayne Gretzky's first game, whatever. Newspapers.com takes you there with historical flavor that search engines like just don't give you. And now, get a free 1-week subscription to newspapers.com by visiting sportshistorynetwork.com/newspapers. With a paid subscription, you'll also be helping to support the production of this podcast and other Sports History Network shows. That's sportshistorynetwork.com/newspapers. Newspapers.com. Way better for searches than you know what I'm talking about.
We here at the Sports History Network proudly partner with 26 podcasts, all revolving around the history of sports. But did you know that many of our hosts were sports history authors way before they started their shows? It's true. We've got Joe Ziemba, host of When Football Was Football, Joe Zagurski, host of Pro Football in the 1970s, Mark Morthier, host of Yesterday Sports, Tommy Phillips, host of Lombardi Memories, and Scott Adamson, co-host of From the 55-Yard Line. All these authors have many books for you to choose from. To check them out, go to our website at sportshistorynetwork.com/sportshistorybooks. Pick up your copy today. Soundtrack provided by Kevin MacLeod of filmmusic.io.